I smiled at my husband's boss while she bragged about her corporate takeover in perfect German, never realizing I understood every word she said. By the time I poured her second glass of wine, I had already decided that the house, the inheritance, and the executive suite would be mine by morning. My husband, Mark, sat at the head of the marble table in our suburban estate. He looked like the perfect managing director. He was wearing a $3,000 suit and a smile that had fooled me for 10 years. Across from him was Elena, the high-post executive who had flown in from Berlin. Mark had told me she was here to finalize his promotion to senior partner. He told me I should just sit there, look pretty, and not worry about the business talk because it was too complex for me. He actually patted my hand and told me to focus on the catering while the grown-ups talked strategy. Is a wife obligated to protect her husband's career after he betrays the very foundation of their home? Or is she justified in using his professional secrets to strip him of everything he loves? Elena leaned forward, her eyes locked on Mark. She reached down and slowly caressed her stomach. The movement was small, but the intent was like a lightning strike in the quiet room. She spoke in German, her voice calm and cold. She said, "Don't worry, your idiot wife will never know that I'm pregnant with your child. She's too simple to see what's right in front of her." Mark didn't even flinch. He just nodded, his eyes filled with a greedy kind of relief. "I know," he replied in his broken, practiced German. "She thinks this dinner is about my promotion. She has no idea the inheritance money she just received from her grandmother is already being moved into our joint account for investment. I'll have the paper signed by Friday, and then we can forget she ever existed." The air in the room felt heavy. My hand was steady as I picked up the heavy crystal wine bottle. They thought I was a fool because I usually played the quiet housewife at these corporate events. They didn't know my grandmother was a linguist who raised me to be fluent in 4 languages. They also didn't know that I had seen Mark's private laptop screen earlier that morning. He wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to use my inheritance to cover a massive embezzlement scandal at his firm. Mark laughed at something Elena said, a loud, booming sound that used to make me feel safe. Now it just sounded like a predator celebrating a kill. He began explaining the restructuring of the firm, using high-level business terms to hide the fact that he was funneling money into a shell company. He spoke about market volatility and asset protection, but in German, he was telling Elena exactly how he forged the board's signatures to keep his executive post. I stood up slowly. The room felt smaller as I walked towards Elena's side of the table. I leaned over, the silk of my dress brushing against her expensive blazer. I poured the dark red wine into her glass until it was dangerously close to the rim. Then I spoke. I didn't whisper. I used a voice that was clear, sharp, and spoken in perfect, high-level German. "Actually, Elena," I said, watching the color drain from her face, "I think the wine might be bad for the baby. And Mark, the investment account you mentioned, I moved that money to a private trust in my name 3 hours ago. It seems your investment has just gone bankrupt." Mark's fork hit the porcelain plate with a loud clatter. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He was a managing director, a man used to controlling every room, but in that second, he looked like a terrified child caught with his hand in the jar. You... You speak German?" he stammered in English, his face turning a ghostly shade of white as he realized the last 10 years of my silence were actually 10 years of observation. As I sat back down, Elena's hand began to shake so hard she had to grip the edge of the table. She looked at Mark, then at me, and I realized there was a second secret hidden in her eyes, one that even Mark didn't know yet. She wasn't just here for the baby or the money. She was here to ensure Mark went to prison so she could take his job. The dinner party was over, but the war had just begun. Mark tried to follow me into our master suite, his voice shaking as he tried to explain. He used the usual executive tactics. He tried to tell me I was overreacting and that I had misunderstood the translation. He even had the nerve to tell me that my hormones were making me imagine things, a classic gaslighting move he used on his junior employees. I didn't misunderstand the word pregnant, Mark, I said, turning to face him. I stayed by the heavy mahogany dresser, my hand resting on the silver jewelry box my grandmother had left me. And I didn't misunderstand the word idiot. I also didn't misunderstand the offshore account numbers you were reciting like a bedtime story. It was just a mistake, Sarah, he pleaded. Elena is powerful. I had to keep her happy to get the promotion. The baby, it might not even be mine. I was just playing along to secure our future. I did this for us. Then why did you sign the voluntary acknowledgement of paternity papers I found in your briefcase? I asked, pulling the document under my jewelry box. He stopped talking. The silence in the suburban estate was deafening. He realized then that I hadn't just been listening at dinner. I had been hunting. I had spent the last week going through his private office files while he was at the gym. I found out that he hadn't just been cheating. He had been forging my signature on documents for high-interest loans. He was using the family home, the home my father had built, as collateral for his failing business ventures. You were going to let us lose the house, I whispered. You were going to take the inheritance my grandmother worked her whole life for and give it to a woman who thinks I'm a fool. You were going to leave me with nothing while you flew off to a new life in Berlin. Mark's persona shifted. The executive came back. He straightened his tie and narrowed his eyes, trying to regain the dominant position he held in the boardroom. So what if I did? He snapped. I'm the one who provides for this family. I'm the managing director. Without my income, this house is just a pile of bricks. You won't leave. You like the luxury too much. You like the country club and the status. You'll stay quiet and we will fix this. I looked at him and felt a strange sense of pity. He didn't understand that for women like me, status is nothing compared to respect. He didn't realize that I had been preparing for this moment since the day I found a strange receipt in his pocket 6 months ago. You think your job is safe? I asked, pulling out my phone. Because while you were in the shower, I got a very interesting email from Elena's personal assistant. It seems Elena isn't just pregnant with your child, Mark. She's also planning to testify against you for the embezzlement to save her own career. She was never going to bring you to Berlin. She was going to make you the fall guy for the entire scandal. Mark's phone began to buzz on the nightstand. It wasn't a call. It was a series of news alerts and internal emails. The high post was crumbling. The look on Mark's face changed from arrogance to pure terror as he read the first sentence of the internal memo. His team had just turned into his executioners, and he was realizing that I was the only person left in the world who knew where the real evidence was hidden. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Mark was pacing the floor of our marble kitchen. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red, and his expensive suit was wrinkled. He kept trying to get me to give him the encrypted laptop I had taken from his office. He tried to be charming, then he tried to be angry, and then he tried to cry. None of it worked. Sarah, please, he begged, his voice cracking. If you give me that drive, I can fix this. I can pin it all on Elena. We can keep the house. We can go back to the way things were. I'll break it off with her. I'll go to therapy. Just don't destroy my life. The way things were? I asked, sipping my coffee calmly. You mean the way where you lied to me every day for 3 years? The way where you planned to steal my inheritance while I slept in the next room? No, thank you, Mark. That life is over. Think about the kids, he said, using the last weapon he had left in his corporate arsenal. Think about how this will look for them. Their father in prison, their home gone. I am thinking about them, I replied. That's why I met with my lawyer at 6 a.m. You see, Mark, my grandmother's will had a very specific clause. She was a very wise woman who knew your family had a history of ambition and gambling with other people's money.
The inheritance and this house only stay in your name as long as you are legally married to me and have no children outside of this union." Mark froze. His hand stopped midair. He hadn't read the fine print. He had been so focused on the corporate ladder that he forgot the woman who built the ladder was smarter than him. He thought the house was his because he paid the property taxes, but he didn't realize the deed was anchored to a moral contract. "If Elena has that baby," I said slowly, "the title of this house automatically reverts entirely to me. And since you've already admitted the paternity in those signed papers, you've effectively signed away your right to live here. You've evicted yourself, Mark." The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't just losing his job, he was losing his shelter. He'd gambled with the one thing he didn't own, and he'd lost the bet. He slumped against the refrigerator, the managing director finally defeated by the woman he called an idiot. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I have nowhere to go. My accounts are frozen." "You have Elena," I reminded him. "Oh wait, I forgot. She's currently being questioned by the federal auditors. It turns out someone sent them a very detailed map of your investment accounts last night, along with a list of every forged signature you ever put on my papers." Mark grabbed his car keys, his face twisted in a sudden, desperate rage. "I'll fight you in court. I'll tell them you're unstable. I'll hire the best lawyers in the country. I'll make sure you never see a dime of that money. You think you're so smart, but I have the power." "The court of law is one thing, Mark, but the court of public opinion is much faster, and your power is currently being packed into boxes." I opened the door to find two men in dark suits standing on the porch. They weren't police. They were the private security team from his firm. Behind them, a local news van was already turning the corner of our quiet suburban street, the cameras already pointing towards our perfect home. "Mark Harrison?" the taller man asked. "You've been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. We're here to collect all company property, including the car in the driveway and the company-issued phone in your pocket." Mark looked at the car, a luxury SUV he loved more than his own soul. Then he looked at the neighbors who were starting to peek through their curtains. The high post managing director was being stripped of his status in front of the whole world. As the security team took his keys, Mark looked back at me, pleading for help with a look of pure desperation. But then my phone rang. It was Elena. And she wasn't calling to talk about the baby. She had a final secret that would end Mark's world forever. "He's gone, isn't he?" Elena's voice came through the speaker. She sounded tired, but she didn't sound defeated. In fact, she sounded like she was finally in control of her own destiny for the first time in years.
"He's standing on the sidewalk watching his car get towed," I said, looking out the window of my beautiful home. Mark was arguing with the security guards, his face turning a dark shade of red, but they were ignoring him like he was a common trespasser. "Good," Elena said. "The auditors found everything they needed in the files you sent. He really was an idiot, Sarah. He thought I was pregnant just to trap him into a marriage. He didn't realize I told him that just to see if he would try to steal your money to pay me off. I needed a confession of his intent to embezzle, and he gave it to me the moment he tried to buy my silence." Mark, standing outside, didn't know that Elena and I had met months ago. He didn't know that two women who were tired of being underestimated by a high-post executive had formed an alliance. There was no baby. There was only a trap designed to catch a greedy man who thought he could play both sides. Elena had never been his mistress. She had been his auditor from the start, sent by the firm to investigate his discrepancies. "Did he fall for it?" she asked. "He signed every paper you gave him," I confirmed. "He was so greedy for the promotion and so sure of his power over me that he didn't even read what he was signing. He thought he was buying his way into your bed, but he was actually signing his confession." Mark walked back to the door and pounded on it. The sound echoed through the house. "Sarah, open the door! Let's talk about this! We can fix it! I love you!" I opened the window just a crack, feeling the cool morning air. There's nothing to talk about, Mark. My lawyer is sending the divorce papers to your new address. I've already had the locks changed while you were pacing the kitchen. What address? He screamed, his voice cracking with the realization that he was truly alone. I don't have an address. I have nothing. The local motel seems fitting for a man of your stature. It has a great view of the highway you'll be walking down. You ruined me! Mark yelled as his face twisted in rage as the news crew stepped out of their van to record his breakdown. You and that German snake, you took my career, you took my house, you were supposed to be my wife! No, Mark, I said softly, my voice carrying over the noise of the street. You took those things. You gambled them away the moment you decided that my inheritance was your playground. I just translated the truth for the world to see. I watched as he finally turned and started walking down the long driveway, carrying nothing but his wrinkled suit jacket and a handful of pride that was worth nothing now. He was a 30-year-old man who thought he was at the top of the world, now realizing he was at the bottom of a hole he dug himself with his own arrogance. The inheritance was safe. The family secrets were out. And the house? The house felt bigger, brighter, and finally, quiet. The ghost of his manipulation was finally gone. As I closed the window, I realized that true power isn't found in a boardroom or a high-post title. It's found in the silence of a woman who knows exactly when to stop smiling and start speaking. It's found in the legacy of a grandmother who knew that the best protection for a woman is her own intelligence. I sat down at the kitchen island, the same place where Mark had tried to belittle me just hours ago. I picked up the phone and called my grandmother's lawyer. It's done. The estate is back in the family name. And tell the board of directors I'm ready to discuss who the next managing director should be. I think they'll find my credentials quite impressive. I smiled. This time, I wasn't pretending. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't the idiot wife. I was the one holding the keys to the empire.